GoForThe2.com in with the Week 6 predictions. Let's get right into it. It's going to be very dog heavy, but I'll give you the couple of favorites that I do like this coming Saturday. Let's start in the SEC. Arkansas, South Carolina. Arkansas coming off a dominating 42-24 win over New Mexico State. They passed for 264 yards through the air, rushed for 230 on the ground last week. But more importantly, defense stepped up in run support, holding New Mexico State to 11 rushing yards in that win. You look at South Carolina, they're coming off a 24-17 loss to Texas A&M in College Station. Now, over the last couple of weeks against SEC opponents, over the last 3 weeks, that defensive front seven has worn down in run support. 3 weeks ago, they allowed 184 rushing yards to Kentucky. They allowed 237 rushing yards last week to Texas A&M. They now face a very physical offensive line in Arkansas that's rushing for 205 yards per game. This is an offense in Arkansas that's converting 50% of their third down conversions. And you're talking about a South Carolina defense that's allowing opposing offenses to convert 45% of the time. South Carolina entering this game is giving up 153 rushing yards per game. They're giving up 253 passing yards to opposing offenses. I think Arkansas can run the football effectively between the tackles, work off of play action with Austin Allen, jump up early and force Jake Bentley and that offense to play from behind. Arkansas defensively is giving up 142 rushing yards per game. They're +2 in turnover margin. And when you look at South Carolina's offense, they're only averaging 22 points per game, have a one-dimensional offense that's passing for 251 yards per game and only rushing for 84 yards per game on the ground. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Rico Dowdle, their running back, and their offensive line to protect Jake Bentley in critical third down situations. I think that's the difference. Look for Austin Allen to work off a play action, get some big plays over the top of South Carolina's defense, and I think Arkansas gets a convincing double-digit win, anywhere from 13 to 17 points in Columbia this coming weekend. Arkansas gets a convincing double-digit victory over South Carolina this coming Saturday. Texas and Kansas State. Kansas State has won 3 of the last 5 over Texas by 14.6 points per game. They won this matchup last year 24-21 in Manhattan, and Charlie Strong. Came down to right around the last 2 minutes of that ball game. They were able to run the football on the Texas defense. Their front seven wore down in that matchup in 2016. Entering this ball game, Baylor and Kansas State. Kansas State's coming off a convincing 33-20 win over Baylor in Manhattan. I thought Baylor would be in that game from start to finish. They were. They trailed 27-20 late in the fourth quarter before they turned the ball over inside their own 20 that allowed Jesse Ertz and that offense to seal the victory 33-20 at home. They now go on the road to face a speed team in Texas. When you look at Kansas State offensively, they're converting 37% of their third down conversions, a one-dimensional offense that wants to run the football with Jesse Ertz. They're rushing for 229 yards on the ground, passing for 179 yards through the air, but they're going up against a front seven in Texas that's very solid in run support. Outside their Week 1 matchup against Maryland, Texas has played very well in terms of run support. They're giving up 96 rushing yards per game. They gave up 42 rushing yards to San Jose State, 71 rushing yards to USC, and only 10 rushing yards last week against a blue-collar team in Iowa State. They won that matchup convincingly, 17-7. Defense played very well inside the red zone as well, and forced Jacob Park into mistakes. When you look at Texas in terms of third down conversions, they're holding opposing offenses to 28% on third downs. Kansas State is only converting 37% of their third down conversions as an offense. Tom Herman has an extra 2 days to prepare from an offensive perspective. I think Texas has a lot more speed on the perimeter to attack that Kansas State secondary vertically. Kansas State over the last couple of games now against Vanderbilt gave up 205 passing yards to the Commodores. They gave up 295 last week to Baylor and gave up big plays over the middle of the field. Texas has the wide receivers to challenge Kansas State secondary vertically. I know Texas has Oklahoma on deck with the Red River rivalry. To me, it doesn't matter. Texas wins this ball game by 17 points or more in Austin. Look for them to start fast, force Jesse Ertz out of that offense. He's only completing 52% as a quarterback. I think if he's forced in third down and long conversions, that's the difference for Texas. Look for them to win the third down battle and really win this ball game convincingly. 17 points or more over the Wildcats this coming Saturday. Another intriguing battle, SEC, Auburn, Ole Miss. Ole Miss was dominated by Alabama 66-3. They allowed 395 rushing yards to the Alabama Crimson Tide, were lackluster, looked like they were walking through the motions, now have to go on the road back to the state of Alabama to face a red-hot Auburn team that's coming off a dominating home win over a blue-collar team in Mississippi State. Defensively, you look at Auburn, they're holding opposing offenses to 142 passing yards per game, but they're going up against an offense in Shea Patterson that's a one-dimensional offense that really is going to challenge Auburn's defense vertically on each and every play. This is an offense in Ole Miss that's averaging 364 passing yards per game. They're only rushing for 74 rushing yards on the ground. Auburn's won 3 of the last 5 over Ole Miss by 7.6 points per game. But more importantly, you look at Auburn's offense. They're balanced. They're passing for over 200, rushing for around 218 yards per game. But you look at this Auburn offense over the last 31 games, they only have 2 games where they were able to pass for over 300 yards. One came 3 weeks ago in the win, 24-10 against Mercer. The other one came in 2015 against Chad Kelly and Ole Miss. They lost that battle by 8 points, but passed for 308 yards in that loss. Those were the only 2 games that Auburn has been able to pass for over 300. Shea Patterson's a solid quarterback. He's completing 66% of his passes, 1,446 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But he's a quarterback that can challenge that secondary. I think they are able to put up some points on Auburn and push Auburn to the limit. Look for Ole Miss to be looking for the upset to erase that unbelievable loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide. They go back to the state of Alabama, focused and ready. Auburn wins, but it is very close, 30-23. Auburn gets the 7-point win over Ole Miss this coming Saturday. Another SEC battle, Florida, LSU. LSU coming off a disappointing home loss to Troy, 24-21. They gave up 206 rushing yards to Chun and Brandon Silvers in that matchup. A disappointing home loss by Ed Orgeron. He's on the hot seat. He goes on the road to the Swamp for homecoming, where Florida's coming off a 38-24 win over the Commodores. We were on Florida last week. They got a critical 4th down conversion, rushed the rock for 216 yards on the ground over back-to-back weeks now. This Florida offense against Vanderbilt and against Kentucky has been able to rush the football. They rushed for 186 yards 2 weeks ago against Kentucky, pounded the rock against Vanderbilt for 216. Felipe Franks is the guy. He's now going to be looked upon to make plays through the air. Luke Del Rio broke his collarbone. He's out. There's really nobody to turn to from a quarterback perspective. But I'm not sold in terms of the game experience of Felipe Franks. This is a team in Florida that's lived very dangerously over the last 3 weeks. Hail Mary 3 weeks ago against Tennessee. 1-point win on the road in Kentucky. Now came back home against a blue-collar team in Vanderbilt. Pushed to the limit, but got the victory. LSU is coming off a disappointing home loss. They go on the road for homecoming. Nobody's expecting them to win, but this is the most physical defense. I don't care that they gave up 206 yards last week. The most physical defense that Florida's faced since week number 1 against Michigan. LSU matches up very well against the offensive line of Florida. When you look at this ball game, they're going to force Felipe Franks to beat them over the top of that secondary. The secondary is still playing very well for LSU. They held Brandon Silvers to only 157 passing yards per game per game in that win by Brandon Silvers last week, 24-21. They still played well in man-to-man coverage. Look for LSU to make enough plays. They're rushing for 192 yards on the ground. Danny Etling, he's an experienced quarterback. He's not great, but I still give the experience for Danny Etling over Felipe Franks. Look for Miles Brennan to get involved as well. Matt Canada is on the hot seat. Ed Orgeron's on Canada. Look for him to be very aggressive on 1st and 2nd down. Somehow, some way, LSU gets the victory. Look for them to run the football. Look for Darius Geis to play in this ball game. I think they get the 3-point win, 23-20 over Florida this coming weekend. This is a ball game last year. LSU now has won 3 of the last 5 over the Gators by 7 points per game. Florida won last year 16-10. This is the game that they had to move from the Swamp to Baton Rouge last year. This year it's homecoming for the Gators. LSU will be into this matchup. You'll get LSU's best effort this coming Saturday. They get the upset win 23-20 over the Gators. Another intriguing battle is Alabama and Texas A&M. What can you say about Texas A&M? I mean, they're 4-1. Kevin Sumlin's on the hot seat, but he seems to be rolling sevens each and every Saturday to save his job. Alabama, 59-0 over Vanderbilt 2 weeks ago. They rushed for 496 yards on the ground. Last week against Ole Miss, 395 yards on the ground rushing. Back-to-back over 600 total yards of offense. Jalen Hurts looks great. This is a team in Texas A&M that Alabama since 2012 is 4-1 and has won those games by 25.4 points per game. Alabama last year was 9-0 against the SEC and won those games by 24.8 points per game. They now go on the road for a night game in College Station. Won this ball game last year 33-14. They trailed in the third quarter with about 5 minutes to go. When Christian Kirk caught the touchdown pass, they turned it on and were able to pull away 33-14 for the 19-point win. But Texas A&M was able to rush for 100 yards in that matchup. Only 2 teams last year were able to rush for over 100 against Alabama's defense. It was Ole Miss, it was Texas A&M. They put up 114 rushing yards on the ground. Look for Keith Ford and Travion Williams to be a factor in this ballgame, but more importantly, Keith Ford. He's a physical runner. He can wear down Alabama's defense. Look for him to be utilized more than Travion Williams in this ballgame. I look at Texas A&M's defense as being able to keep them in this ballgame, let's say through 3 quarters. Texas A&M entering this ballgame is holding opposing offenses to 95 rushing yards per game. There's been only one team throughout the year that's been able to rush for over 100 on Texas A&M. It was Arkansas. They allowed 223 yards in the overtime win, 50-43 over Brett Bielema. Every other opponent for Texas A&M has been held under 100 yards. They're +8 in turnover margin and are holding opposing offenses to 28% on third down conversions. Texas A&M has a mobile quarterback in Kellen Mond. He's inexperienced, but Texas A&M does have Christian Kirk and some playmakers to stretch Alabama's defense vertically on seam routes. Look for them to be aggressive on first and second down, to control the time of possession, to loosen up running lanes later in that battle. I think Texas A&M can score some points. College Station's not an easy place to play on a Saturday night. This can make Kevin Sumlin's job and save his career if somehow, some way he gets the upset. I don't think he gets the upset, but I think he pushes Alabama to the limit Saturday night. Jalen Hurts makes enough plays. Alabama wins by 14 points in this ballgame. Another intriguing battle is Oklahoma, Iowa State. Since 2011, Oklahoma's 6-0 over Iowa State and have won those games by 27.6 points per game. You're talking about a team last year in Oklahoma that won in Ames 34-24. They're coming out of a bye week and have the Red River rivalry on deck for Lincoln Riley and Baker Mayfield. Lincoln Riley's a new coach. How does he come out of the bye week? I'm not so sure this team comes out with consistency. He's a younger head coach. Bye weeks are very tricky, even for experienced head coaches. Lincoln Riley and this team do have Texas on deck. You're talking about an Iowa State team that has some offensive playmakers. Their quarterback, Jacob Park, I'm very high on him, but he's playing very inconsistent this year, only completing 66% of his passes, 1,181 yards, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But Iowa State is a team that traditionally has played Oklahoma tough, especially in Ames. I think they go on the road. I think they can make enough plays to keep this game close. Defensively, Iowa State's holding opposing offenses to 116 rushing yards on the ground. Defensively, they can force some third down and long situations. They played very well against Shane Buechele in Texas last week. They played very blue-collar. Offensive defensive lines played very well. I expect Iowa State to be in this game from start to finish. When you look at the offense of Iowa State, they're passing for 295 yards through the air. They have Allen Lazard. They have Montgomery, the running back, that can be utilized in the short to intermediate passing game. And offensive line has played very well this year. only allowed 5 sacks throughout the season. As long as Jacob Park has time, I think he can make enough plays to put up some points on Oklahoma and Norman. Look for Oklahoma to win, but by only 17 points or less. Oklahoma gets a lackluster victory over the Cyclones this coming Saturday. Pac-12 battle, Stanford, Utah. Williams, their quarterback, Troy Williams, gets the start over Huntley this coming Saturday. This is a Utah offense that's passing for 277 yards per game. Defensively, they're only allowing 86 rushing yards on the ground. When you look at Stanford, they're 3-2. They beat up on Arizona and UCLA in back-to-back weeks. Everybody's talking about how Bryce Love should be a possible Heisman Trophy contender because he's tearing it up. He's breaking Christian McCaffrey's records. We're talking about Bryce Love that rushed for over 300 yards against Arizona State, an Arizona State defense that's given up 190 rushing yards per game so far this year. He rushed for over 300 against UCLA. This is a UCLA defense that's given up, after last week, Colorado, 287 rushing yards per game. You're talking about a physical blue-collar team in Utah that traditionally plays very well in Ross Eccles Stadium. It's a home game. Stanford's on the road. I think they could stretch Stanford's defense vertically. I'm still not sold on the Cardinals' secondary. That's the way you have to beat Stanford, is over the top. I'm not sold on the quarterback play of Keller Christ, Ryan Burns, or Costello in terms of stretching defenses vertically. Stanford's rushing for 272 rushing yards per game. Utah's the more physical team. Utah wins this ballgame. It is very close, low scoring, 24-20. Utah gets the upset win over the Cardinal. I don't think Stanford's a legitimate team. When you look at last year, if you want to compare last year, they were 10-3. They were 4-3 last year against opponents with a combined overall record of 57-26. You look at their last 6 games of the year last year, they beat up on subpar competition. They were 6-0 against opponents with a combined overall record of 27-46. That makes up Stanford's 10-3 record in 2016. Utah only lost 4 games last year by a total of 19 points. They're the more physical team. They're undefeated. They get the upset win over the Stanford Cardinal. Look for them to win this ballgame 24-20 over Stanford this coming Saturday. Keep an eye out for the radio show, 9 to 12 Eastern, 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific this coming Saturday, Fantasy Sports Radio Network, or you could tune into Dish Network. Angel One, we're switching over, channel 262, this coming Saturday, 9 to 12 Eastern, 6 to 9 Pacific, channel 262, Dish Network. Check it out, or Fantasy Sports Network if you're in the New York, New Jersey area, or even Connecticut, Optimum or Cablevision, channel 238. College football is the best. I just love talking about it.